So let's look at some examples of how to use the recurring journal. And I will start with searching for the recurring journal. And here I will select the recurring general journals. There we go. And here you can see the recurring general journal. And it looks a lot like the regular general journal that we saw in the previous lessons. But you can already notice some differences, I think, like the recurring method, the recurring frequency, and so on. So these are fields that we use in the recurring journal and that you don't find in the regular general journal. Okay, let's start with the first example. And in the previous lesson, we saw the different recurring methods. And in this lesson, I will start with variable. So we saw that fixed is a method that we can use for fixed amounts. So if the amount stays the same for my different periods, then I will use fixed. But if the amount changes period to period, then it's better to use variable, because with variable, as we will see in this example, the system will set the amount to 0 after posting. And that's what I would like to do here. So, and by the way, the example that I will demonstrate here is depreciation. So the posting of depreciation expenses. And I know that there is a fixed asset application area in Business Central that can calculate depreciations automatically. But still, I would like to use this example because I also would like to demonstrate the allocations function. And there, the depreciation example is a very good one, in my opinion. Okay, so first of all, and because the depreciation amount changes from period to period, I will use variable. Then there's a frequency, so that's the depreciation is something I would like to post once a month. So I can enter 1M, but there you will have to pay attention, because if you enter 1M and if you're going from February to March, you will see that after posting February, the system will suggest the 28th of March. And that's, of course, not what we want, or the 29th. But that's not what we want. We want to post on the last day of the month. And that's something that you can achieve by extending the date formula like this. So 1M plus CM, which stands for current month. So, and this will ensure me that we're always posting on the last day of the month. Then the posting date. This is also something that you might have to pay attention to, because in the recurring general journal, the rule is that the system will only post lines where the posting date is equal or later than the or before the work date. So equal or before the work date. Very important. Why is this? Well, quite simple. In that way, you can have different lines with different frequencies, and the system, by applying that rule, will never post in the future. You see, that's the reason. Okay, in this case, let's double check my work date. So if I go to my settings, you can see that my work date is the 31st of January 2020. And that's fine. So I can stick with the 31st, because again, the rule is that the posting date should be equal or before the work date. And in this case, it's equal. Then document type, I will leave blank. Document number, as we saw in the previous lesson, you can use variables, percentage 1, 2, and so on. But in this case, let's keep it simple. And then I can select the account type. So in this case, I will stick with GL account for my depreciation example. Okay, so normally when entering a depreciation posting or depreciation lines in a general journal, probably you would start with the depreciation expense account. But in this case, I will do it the other way around. I will start with the balance sheet account. And the reason is quite simple. I would like to allocate my depreciation expense to different departments. And because allocating is done based on the balancing account, I will have to enter the expense account as the balancing account. And for that reason, I will start here with the balance sheet account. Okay, so in this case, let's look for the account. And I will use account 1240, accumulated depreciation operating equipment. Here also, you might have to pay attention if you're following along with the example, because first you might have to enable direct posting for this GL account. Otherwise, you cannot post to the account if direct posting isn't enabled. So here you see in my example, I already enabled it. If this is not the case in your demo environment, just go to the GL account card and select the direct posting field. Okay, So the account is selected, then I will enter the amount, and also this is very important because we need to post a credit amount to this account. And remember what we saw in one of the previous lessons: to post credits we enter negative amounts. So, and suppose that this is let's use an amount that is a bit higher, something like this. Suppose that this is my depreciation expense for January. Okay, then I can now allocate the depreciation expense. Now, to go to allocations, I can click here on the allocated amount field, or I can click on allocations. Okay, so again, here I will now enter the expense account. So my depreciation expenses, let's look up the account. So by entering part of the description, and I will select depreciation equipment, 8,820. Now, like I just said, the example I would like to make here is I would like to allocate part of the depreciation expense to each department. And for that reason, first, I will now select the department for the first line. So by clicking on Navigate in the ribbon, I can click on Dimensions. Next, I will select the dimension code Departments and the dimension value Administration. So the first department I would like to assign depreciation expenses to is the Administration department. And now I can do this based on a quantity or based on a percentage. And for this example, the most convenient option is the percentage. And suppose that, for example, the Administration department should get 20% of the depreciation equipment expenses. I can just enter the percentage, and you see that the system automatically calculates the amount. Okay, I will do the same for the second line, but of course for another department. So I will use the same account. But in this case, by going to dimensions, I will select again the department dimension, but another dimension value. So for example, production. And suppose that we want to assign 70% to the production department, and then the remaining 10% to the sales department. So again, the same account, and now dimensions, department, and sales. So the third department of Kronos International. And like I just said, the remaining 10%. So there you go. I've assigned 100%. Again, you can see the amounts appearing in the last field on the line. And this is what will be posted not only to the GL account, but also to the dimensions that I have selected for each line, in this case the department dimension. But if you want, by the way, you can of course also assign multiple dimensions. Okay, let me close this page, back to the recurring journal, and everything is complete now. So the method is there, the recurring frequency that we just saw, there's the document number and the amount with the allocation. Last but not least, if you want, you can enter an expiration date. You don't have to, but in for some examples, you might want to enter an expiration date to end, for example, a specific journal line on the last day of the year and so on. So that's something that you can enter, but again, you don't have to. So let's go and post this example. So I will click on Post. Yes. And everything now is successfully posted. Now, first of all, what we see here now on the recurring general journal line is exactly the same, but with two differences. And so we still see a variable. There's still 1 month plus current month. But of course, the difference now is that the 29th of February 2020 is in the posting date field. So you see that the system applied the frequency when posting the previous, the January amount. And you also see that the amount is set to 0. So this means that the next time I will have to enter the amount again. And by using the allocation keys, the system will allocate each percentage again to the different departments. You see, so that's a very nice example of what you can do with the recurring journal. And by the way, if I try to post again, you will see that there is nothing to post. And the reason is quite simple. Like I already explained, because the posting date is now later than the work date, the system doesn't process this line. Let's go and have a look at the results, and I will do this by searching for the GL registers. So here the first line, that's the register created when posting the recurring journal. So let's go and have a look. I will select the line, and if I now click on General Ledger, you can see what the system has posted. So let me collapse here the Factbox pane, and now you can see the different lines. So 4 lines, as you can see, so 3 lines for account 8820, and of course the difference between each line is the department. So if I click on navigate and if I click on dimensions, you can also see the dimension the system posted to. And then here, of course, my balance sheet account. Let's now look at a second example of how to use recurring general journals. And I will use the search function again to go to the recurring journals. There we go. So in here you can still see the first line appearing, and I will just leave it there because that's also the way that you might want to use it in real life. All these different postings, depreciations, accruals, and so on. And again, because of the posting date rule, the system will only process these lines based on your work dates. Okay, my first line demonstrated the variable recurring method. In this case, let's use one of the reversing methods. Reversing fixed, reversing variable. Let's use reversing fixed in this case. And as we already saw in the previous lesson, the reversing methods will also create reversing entries when posting. So first of all, I will use the same date formula. There we go. And I will, of course, change my posting date, because if I stick with this posting date, the system will not process the line because the posting date is later than my work date. So I will set it to the 31st of January 2020. There we go. Then document type, document number, that's okay. And then, for example, in this case, I would like to post an accrual. An accrual of expenses, for example. So first of all, I will look up an expense account. So let's take electricity and heating. I will clear the posting group fields because I don't want to post with VAT. So I would like to post without VAT. So there we go. And then I will enter the amount fields. So suppose that I would like to create or post an accrual of, let's say, 800. Then there are 2 options now to enter the balancing account. So I can do this by going to the allocated amount field. So let's use this function. So I will click on allocated amount and I will enter the balancing account. In this case, I've created a new account. There it is. So I've created a new account, but you can also use one of the existing accounts. It's just to demonstrate the function in the recurring journal. So the account that I'm using here is 2331 accrued expenses. And I will post everything to this account. In this case, there's no need to allocate to different departments, for example. So the 100% will go to the accrued expense account. So that's the first way of entering the line. You could also enter a second line, of course, as we saw in one of the first lessons of this module. But in this case, I've entered everything on one line. Okay, so let's go and post. So I will click on post. Do you want to post the journal lines? Yes, everything is successfully posted. What the recurring journal is concerned, you can see here the posting date also for the second line now on February, which means that we are ready to post on February. And of course, because we have used reversing fixed, the fixed method, you see here the difference with the first example is now that the amount will stay there. So the next time, supposing that the amount is indeed still 800, I can just post the line without having to adjust something. You see, so that's the intention, of course, of fixed. Let's also look at the results. So I will search for my GL registers. There we go. And here the first line. So let's go and have a look. I will click on General Ledger. And here you can see now the 4 lines the system created. Let's maybe sort on document number. So here, first of all, you can see the posting on the 31st of January. So the initial posting where we have posted expenses, electricity and heating expenses for 800 against the accrual account. But what you then see, and that's the effect of the reversing method, is that we get the reversing entries 1 day later. So on the 1st of February, the reversing entries are posted. And that's very important because, as I told you in the previous lesson, in some examples, it's very important that we are posting on the last day of the month. And this is one of the examples. Because otherwise, if we are not on the last day of the month, the reversing entries might not appear in the next period. You see, so that's why it's very important here to post on the last day of the month. So this is an example of how to use one of the reversing methods in the recurring general journals.